When we think of World War II survival stories, our minds usually go to weapons, rations, or raw grit on the battlefield. But hidden in the shadows of history are the strange, often dangerous concoctions that soldiers drank, not out of pleasure, but out of desperation. These weren't just beverages. They were liquid lifelines, sometimes toxic, sometimes ingenious, and almost always the difference between life and death. Today, we're diving into 5 deadly drinks that saved World War II soldiers' lives, the kind of stories that make you realize survival in wartime was as much about chemistry and luck as it was about courage. In the field, soldiers often had no access to safe water or proper spirits. What they sometimes turned to was industrial alcohol, the same high-octane stuff used for engines, sterilizing equipment, or fueling lamps. Drinking it was risky, even deadly, because industrial alcohol was often laced with poisonous additives like methanol. But for troops cut off behind enemy lines, it was a desperate substitute for both hydration and morale. Soldiers diluted it with water, boiled it, or tried to filter it through bread to make it less lethal. Many paid with blindness or illness, but others credited it with keeping them alive when clean water simply didn't exist. Industrial alcohol blurred the line between poison and salvation in ways no one could ever forget. In the frozen Eastern Front, where winters were brutal and supplies scarce, Russian soldiers turned to the forests themselves. They tapped birch trees and fermented the sap, sometimes distilling it into a crude, fiery vodka. It wasn't the smooth spirit you'd sip at home, but a chemical cocktail strong enough to numb pain, disinfect wounds, and, in some cases, warm the body enough to stave off frostbite. This woodland brew had its dangers. It was harsh on the liver, dehydrated the body, and could cause disorientation in the freezing cold. But when your body was shutting down from exposure, a rough gulp of birch bark vodka could mean the difference between life and death. Coffee might sound ordinary compared to industrial alcohol or tree spirits, but in wartime it was far from a casual drink. Soldiers relied on condensed coffee, often mixed with chicory root, as a stimulant that kept them awake through grueling marches and overnight battles. It wasn't deadly in the traditional sense, but overuse created dangerous conditions: dehydration, irregular heartbeats, and hallucinations from extreme caffeine overload. Yet without it, soldiers could collapse from exhaustion, leaving them vulnerable to ambush or capture. Condensed coffee wasn't just comfort. It was chemical armor against fatigue, and for many, it was the difference between alert survival and deadly mistakes. One of the strangest and most infamous survival drinks of World War II was jungle juice. Allied soldiers in the Pacific, cut off from supplies, began fermenting anything that contained sugar: fruit, canned juice, rice, even bread soaked in water. The results were unpredictable, ranging from mildly alcoholic to, honestly, dangerously toxic. Soldiers joked about the wild side effects, but the truth was that this improvised brew was deadly serious. It offered calories, boosted morale, and gave a psychological edge in some of the most miserable conditions imaginable. Yet it carried real risks: exploding fermentation bottles, alcohol poisoning, and even blindness from poorly fermented batches. Still, many credited jungle juice with keeping their spirits intact in the most spirit-crushing environments. In tropical war zones, soldiers weren't just battling bullets, but also disease, especially malaria. Quinine, derived from the bark of the cinchona tree, was the only reliable treatment, and it was often delivered in the form of bitter tonics. To make it drinkable, soldiers mixed it with whatever alcohol or flavoring they could find, creating some of the most infamous concoctions of the war. These drinks were harsh, metallic, and sometimes, well, nauseating, but they worked. Without quinine tonics, entire units would have been wiped out by malaria long before they ever saw enemy fire. Soldiers came to view this bitter, almost poisonous-tasting liquid as a guardian angel in a bottle. From industrial alcohol to jungle juice, these drinks remind us that survival in World War II wasn't just about bravery, it was about desperate innovation. Soldiers walked a razor-thin line between poison and salvation, turning deadly liquids into lifelines under unimaginable conditions. Each of these drinks carried risks that could easily have killed, but they also carried hope, courage, and, the stubborn will to endure. If you found this glimpse into the hidden survival stories of World War II fascinating, make sure to subscribe to Strange History and share this video with a friend who loves uncovering the overlooked secrets of the past. There are countless more strange and shocking stories waiting to be told, and you won't want to miss them.